This is the Other 22 Hours podcast. Hey, and welcome to this week's episode of the Other 22 Hours podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Shafer-Haiss.
And I'm your other host, Michaela Anne, and we are on episode 132. And this week, we're featuring our conversation with Kris Delmhorst.
Yeah, Kris Delmhorst is a singer-songwriter who has been on our list for years. She's come recommended from so many of our guests, from Mark Arelli, who was back on episode 14, to Lori McKenna, who was here on episode 60, to all points in between. And so it's wonderful to finally get Kris on here. She has been recording and releasing records for over 25 years, a lot of them on the famed little indie label Signature Sounds that's also out of Western Massachusetts, and now also just completely independently by herself. She has recorded, written, and performed with former guests of ours, Mary Gauthier, Lori McKenna, also Peter Mulvey, and Lee Phillips. She's married to another singer-songwriter named Jeffrey Folkalt, who we obviously asked that question, like, what's that like, having two songwriters, two album cycles? How do you guys navigate that? She's been critically acclaimed by all of the places and has written for film. She's written for TV. She showed up at all of your favorite festivals, and she's just an incredible guest.
Yeah, and some of the highlights of this conversation for us where we talk about the need to retreat and honoring that retreat from our everyday life in order to kind of drop down and really connect and be able to write songs. The role of the songwriter and creative in our society and how essential it is, that it's not a selfish act, that it's not about us. The difference between the inward artist versus the outward marketer. And she has this beautiful analogy that she takes from her yoga teacher, which translates into doing the work and the steps, trusting that the business and the career will take the shape it needs. I'll leave it to later in the episode to let Kris elaborate on that beautiful metaphor.
Yeah, and if you've listened to our show before, you know that we take tips, recommendations, vibes from our community over on Patreon. They all get advance notice of the guests, and so they can submit questions, they can submit topics that they'd like to hear our guests take on. And they also get the immensely deep, soul-fulfilling pleasure of knowing that they financially support this show and the continued production of this show. So if any of those things sound intriguing to you, there is a link to our Patreon in our show notes.
And if you're a visual person, this episode and all of our episodes are also available for viewing on YouTube. So without further ado, here is our conversation with Kris Delmhorst.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hi. We always start with just how are you today and where are you creatively?
Well, how am I today? This is a little bit of a crazy week because I have a daughter who's a senior in high school.
Oh my gosh.
Whoa.
And her first college application, like her early decision one, is due in a couple days. So there's an ambient sense of mini freak out around me right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm at. So I have not been thinking about music. Actually, that's not true. I thought about it a lot this morning. Anyway, and in terms of my musical cycle, I had a record out in the spring. And for me right now, at this point in my life, like really majorly toward it, I had a band out for multiple weeks across the country, which was amazing. And now I'm sort of on the back side of that arc where I'm not playing too much. I'm doing some of my other little local musical projects and some other stuff, and kind of retreated very hastily back to mom mode because this is kind of a big year. That's basically where I'm at right now.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, even in our world, having a full band out for multiple chunks of weeks at a time, that's
a lot.
Yeah.
It's insane, yeah. And it's a lot more than it was even the last time I did it, which was before the pandemic, maybe like 19 or 18, I can't remember. I had a record that came out in 2020 and I had the whole band tour booked and everything. And then obviously that didn't happen. So it's been a while, and just it's so different even from then, just the amount of not only all the stuff like getting the tours put together and hiring everybody and sorting the travel and paying for the travel and blah, blah, blah. But just like the sheer volume of promotional stuff that you have to do just continues to balloon. I was good and cooked by the end of the spring.
Mm-hmm.
You've been doing this for 25 years about?
Even probably a little more.
So even in the span of 5 years, you're talking about the change. But in what ways have you seen it change for better or worse since you started out doing this?
Yeah. It is crazy to think about how different it was. I think I was first started doing tours of any kind in the late 90s. It was the same agent that I have now. We've been together the whole time. It's actually, I think, come to think, probably the longest relationship in my entire life. And so we'd book the tour. I would go to Kinko's Copies in Harvard Square after my show because it was 24 hours and everyone would be there after the show. We'd make our little postcards. We'd Xerox them. We'd mail them and then we'd hope for the best and we'd go on tour and like people would show up or they wouldn't. That was it. And the promoters were in charge of getting people to show up. It's just like very simple. I know. It's crazy to even think about that right now.
I mean, even just the sentence, promoters were in charge of getting people to show up.
Right?
It's literally in the name of
it is
their
in the
job
name.
description.
It is the job. Of course, there are some promoters who are great and thank God for them and we love them. But there's also a lot of the thing of it's a week out and we've sold 15 tickets, do something. You know, you get that email from the promoters. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Or you could do something too.
Or it could be a we thing.
Exactly. I mean, it should be a we thing. I mean, it is cool to be a little bit involved. There was something, I don't know, I think about us at that time, just these like space travelers, because we also didn't have cell phones, obviously. We certainly didn't have the internet. So you're just kind of like wandering about, going to your shows. What will happen? You know, it's so funny. We had a lot less information. And obviously that's a downside, but there's also kind of just like a cleanness, just a simplicity to it that I do find myself missing. Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah. I can't imagine what it would be like to be on tour and not have a portal into seeing what everybody else is doing back home or on their tours.
On their tours. Yes.
Whoa, their show looks super packed. And I now feel even worse about my show that didn't sell as well as I hoped last night. And the reality is that like we don't actually know how packed that show was. Like we are granted access to more information, but also more farce. Would that be the correct way to use it? Like,
definitely.
Yeah. So I saw recently Katie Pruitt, who's a young singer-songwriter. She just did a tour and she posted beforehand her actual ticket sales. And she did this whole post that was like, okay, I've never made money on a tour. I've never come home from a tour with any money. I'm told the only way I can turn a profit on this tour is if I sell out these shows. And like, this is where my tickets are at, like 2 weeks out. And did an update. One, I think it's brave when people do that because there's so much about trying to keep up the farce of like,
look like you're crushing it.
Yeah. And Katie's had massive opportunities like touring with Brandi Carlile and the festivals she's played. And she's showing like some places she had only sold 15 tickets in a room with a 50 cap and like others were at 100. But like all of them were under like 200-300 cap rooms. And that's just really informative and helpful to translate, oh, okay, I'm actually not an epic failure if I only sold 40 tickets because the proportions are like these people who have this bigger machine or these bigger opportunities are also only selling that in some of these markets. So what that does to our psyche to then be able to fully perform and also like enjoy what we're doing, I think is a very pervasive challenge for a lot of artists in today's world.
Yeah.
I just want to go and add a note to what you were saying about Katie and about like maybe I'm not an epic failure because of all these people with the machine. I think like even more than that is that no matter the machine, it's like we as the musicians are not the epic failure. The system, there's some disconnect in the whole system between putting music out, having a team behind you, having a push behind you, and then like people actually coming to shows. It's an epidemic that plagues, I think, everybody across the board, unless you happen to be Taylor Swift. There's such a separation. It's like you're either selling stadiums or like, hopefully you can buy a coffee, you know?
Yeah. The middle is definitely carved out from how it used to be. Yeah, for sure. For me, I don't think it affects, certainly not when I'm on stage, like I'm not thinking about that stuff. And that's kind of like, even more than ever before, I feel like the time of the actual playing of the music is like the refuge from the rest of it, you know, and I mean, like the other 22 hours, which are sort of laid in with bullshit, not entirely, but like, you know,
it's there.
Plenty of it. And then like, I mean, it always feels so surreal how small a portion of your time you're actually spending doing that thing, which is what is worth it enough to make us all keep doing this insane job. You know?
I know. I think about how that small amount of time, I think it's such a testament to the magic of music and sharing and connection, because this year, the only shows I've done, I've been like carrying our baby on my back to them.
Oh, yeah.
And like, we've done a few where we've gone as a family, which is very different when Aaron's there. But a few of them, a handful, like 3 different weekends, I've just flown with the baby and then had people help me there. But like,
I've been there.
I've thought about the moments when I'm like trying to like get into a hotel with a suitcase, merch suitcase, a stroller, a baby, and a guitar. And I'm like, this is physically actually not really possible. And I'll be like, I'm doing this all for like a 30-minute opening set. And still, every time I'm like, that was totally worth it. Like,
although I will say, when I was in that phase touring with the baby, I was a little less tapped in to that stuff. It was definitely more of a survival situation. And I felt like I was sort of only half there for a little while. Like, I have one kid, but I toured a lot. And my husband, Jeffrey Foucault, is a songwriter too. And mostly we tour separately, but we occasionally tour together. And when our daughter was a baby, we toured together basically from when she was about 6 months old until the day before she turned 2, because then you have to buy them a seat. We literally came home from our last tour the day before her second birthday.
So did
Pretty much
we.
did the same.
From Europe.
We were in Europe, and Michaela literally had to tell our management, like, we can't add any more shows.
Yeah,
We just
totally.
can't. Nope.
Exactly. So we were touring a lot together, and that, I mean, it was great. It was still exhausting. But also I did a few where I just flew to the West Coast with my toddler and, you know, sorted it out. And I definitely remember I have this very clear memory of like pulling up to my motel, and it was like up 2 stairs to my room, and I had like kid asleep in the car seat and the guitar in the suitcase. So I was like, it's not gonna happen. It was a relief to get past those first couple of years and feel a little bit more present on stage. I felt like I was not completely, but like definitely partially sort of faking it or just going through the motions for a while there. It's just a lot for one person and brain and heart to tend to at once. It's a lot.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
How was your relationship with your creativity at home during that time?
I didn't write a song for about a year and a half after I had my daughter. And that obviously is one of the things that we're all terrified of when we are going to have a kid. And I was like, well, it's true. It was all true.
Oh, yeah.
And then I think she just started sleeping through the night, and then everything started to be okay again. I think it was more sleep deprivation than anything else. But it has been sort of an evolving, I mean, she's 17 now. We've been through a lot of different phases with it. It's still the easiest for me to really write when I'm not here. I do a couple of songwriting retreats during the year that kind of happen regularly. And then I usually will just go away on my own. And Jeff will do it sometimes too, but I definitely do it once or twice a year, just like get some little Airbnb like hut and just hole up and get all the way in to that brain. Because it's just really hard to switch back and forth. And I never thought I would be able to be the kind of person who was like, oh, I have an hour and 15 minutes. I'm going to, write a song or whatever, do my stuff. And then, of course, you do adapt and you do figure out how to do a version of that. But it's still not the same as just like going all the way inside and like losing track of time and space and everyone else. And so I still really need that for the way I write. I need to kind of get to that zone at least a few times a year. And then that seems to work. And then I can kind of like chip away and finish things and do all the other little parts when I'm home in my little bits of time.
Yeah, I progressively find it harder and harder to write at home. Even if there aren't any kids around, there's so many things to do.
There's remnants of kids.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, like it's such a gift when an idea pops into my head. But coming up in the last several years, I've always loved going on retreats or going away even before kids.
Yeah, me too.
But I think there was a part of me that kind of felt like self-judgment of like, oh, am I being so precious and kind of like, ooh, I'm an artist and I have to go retreat to be able to write. And now I'm studying depth psychology of creativity in a master's program and from like Carl Jung's psychology theories. And there's a deep psychological practice and belief in the necessity of retreating and being quiet with yourself to channel creativity, but also to just connect with who we are and connect with our psyche away from all of the outside relationships and messages that can cloud or pull us in different directions and really align with, well, what am I wanting to say? And who am I in my deepest essence versus I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a writer, I'm a performer. So it's encouraging my commitment to it of like, no, you're not being selfish or hoity-toity to be like, I need to go away to create. It's really
I mean,
essential.
that's our actual job. That's our role in the world, is to go there, because not everyone gets to go there. It's hard. This came to be very clear to me when I had a little baby and I was completely just in that mode of like, so kind of overwhelmed and just dealing with what was right in front of me all the time. Jeff and I were driving up to a festival in Vermont. We had her with us, and he put on this Greg Brown record that I'd heard 600 billion times, and he put it on and I just burst into tears, and it just like hit me so hard at that time. And what I realized was that it's because I wasn't accessing, and because I have lived this sort of privileged artist life where I get to go there all the time, it was a new thing for me that like I hadn't really gotten down into any of the deeper emotional layers lately, because I had just been doing all this other shit and just dealing with like needs of other people and just basic needs of myself. And that was, I think, the first time I really understood what we're for, like what our actual job is, what the job is, not just like, okay, I'm writing songs because I have the urge to write songs, but it's like we're writing songs about whatever, our own life or feelings or imagination or whatever. But like what we're offering people isn't even really so much that, it's a pathway. Our job is to like open up the places that they don't have the time or the bandwidth or the inclination to access on their own. Mm-hmm. And it's really, really, really important. This is the pep talk I give myself whenever I'm having the like, oh, what am I doing for the world kind of thing. And maybe it's not enough to do for the world, but it's a really big, important thing that people need, you know? Yeah. And it's why music is part of every ceremony, like every ceremonial kind of occasion. It's like it opens up the doors between the sort of like day-to-day doing my thing into like the more mysterious layers.
Yeah, no, I think it's incredibly important, and one of the missions, I guess, of this podcast, and also I feel like in our lives, increasingly over the last few years as we've gotten older and become parents, is kind of that. We were just talking to Amy right now, and she said the phrase lobbying for creativity. And I feel like it's going to be increasingly important for all of us who do tap into it to honor that this isn't a narcissistic, selfish endeavor, and all these other things that make it kind of that feed that idea of like apps and streams and views and whatever.
Yeah.
That it's this deeply spiritual practice that we need for ourselves and also society needs. We all need it, exactly for the reason that you said of it reflects back for people when they don't have the bandwidth or the moment or whatever to be able to access it.
To me, like where the rub really comes in is the whole system and all of that. But like for us to be able to have the time and space to access those deeper emotional layers takes an audience and at least some kind of infrastructure that provides us with like the financial and schedule freedom to make space for that. And to get our music out there, that is where it starts to become this conundrum. It inherently, because of like, I guess the algorithm, just to use a word, like it turns it into this kind of narcissistic thing because that's what gets in front of people and that's how it sees people. And it, at least for me, and I don't release things myself. I help other people release things. I see that a lot where it's like this rub of, okay, I'm doing this deeply personal thing that is in service, that is open-hearted and inviting. And then I have to get it out and
try to sell it.
And sell it. And you inherently had to be like, well, look at me. Here, look at this offering. And
absolutely. I think that that's just the central tension of being any kind of artist is like the making of the thing and the selling of the thing. And the selling of the thing now is pretty out of hand the way it works now. And it's bonkers. But like the kernel of it is like being two completely different people, you know? And it's hard to have those two different kinds of person in one person. And there's a lot of artists who can't do that thing, you know, like just can't. And I don't think it's easy for most of us because we're mostly sort of sensitive souls or whatever. Like it just doesn't come naturally to most artists to try then go out and like round people up, talk about how great you are. Like, you know, we all know people who really can't. In this kind of world, no one's going to see what they're making, which is a loss.
Yeah. We had a guest on here named Dave House. He came up in the punk scene in Philly and now has a solo thing and is a songwriter. And he had this great analogy where, you know, when we're in our creativity, when we're making the art and we're doing like that work, the fulfilling work, it's like you're in the freshwater and you're way upstream and it's like maybe you're in name whatever beautiful pond or lake or stream that is all over New England. And then, you know, you make the record and you're heading towards the ocean, and the ocean is the industry and it's wild and it's big and it's rough and it's dangerous and you can get lost. And he's like, so there's the brackish water in between where like you're right there and you're not quite out there. It's like, how can I get this ship to sail in the ocean without having to just be fully in there and lose myself? That was such an apt analogy for the whole thing.
It's wild.
Have you found over the years of doing this ways to help yourself navigate that while simultaneously all the requirements of the job are constantly changing? So I would imagine, at least in my experience, you can start to feel like, okay, I have some solid footing, and then, oh, now there's this whole new thing I have to adapt to.
Yeah.
But I do think the emotional, personal work of reconciling your creative self with your career self is something that all of that underneath could be moving and changing all the time. What has your experience and journey with that been like over the last 20 some years?
Lately, for the past like maybe 4 times I've put out a record. I was on a label, Signature Sounds, for a long time. And then we sort of decided it just didn't really make sense to like do it that same way, but we're still very much family. So the first thing I always do when I've recorded a record or I'm going to record a record is I get together with the guy who runs that label and we get coffee and I'm like, tell me the music business right now. Because it's been 4 years or something and it's completely different from the last time. And then I have little calls with a few of my friends that are managers because I'm also not working with a manager anymore because that doesn't make sense given my scale at the moment. So then I call up some manager friends and I'm like, tell me the music business. So and I just, get all caught up on what it even is and what the job is. The job of, I mean, I know what the artist's job is, but then like the other half of it changes all the time, like you were saying. So part of it is just like getting a lot of tips. Really the question that it all comes back to with that is just like, what can I do and still feel like I'm being reasonably true to who I am? Where does my comfort level, none of it's comfortable, but like, finding the line of like, this I can live with. I feel like this I can be more or less genuine about and like it comes from me. And then just like skipping the rest of it is increasingly like every album cycle, I feel like I have a little more courage to just not do it. Whatever you're supposed to do, if it feels shitty to me or it feels like I would never do that in a million years or I feel gross even talking about this, then I'm just like, I'm not going to do it. It's like the thing of, I have this yoga teacher who will talk about like, if you're going to do a pose, let's say like tree pose, she's like, you can come at it like, make your body into this shape, like that my body's doing, or you can be like, take these internal motions, like open this hip, straighten this thing, and then let the shape that results from that be the shape. That's the way I continue to try to think about my career is like, I'm trying to not try to make my career look like what I see of someone else's career on the internet or whatever. I'm trying to like do the things that are authentic to me. And then the shape that results from that, I'll take it as long as it's, viable at all. Like that's my career.
Oh, I love that.
I'm just sitting here thinking like, I would imagine that if you were focusing on the internal motions that you have to make, we have a young kid in a sleep-deprived way, like you're going to yoga better. Then if you're just trying to copy a pose, like chances are like you're probably holding tension somewhere.
Totally, exactly.
And you're actually kind of doing damage. Yeah, that analogy just keeps going.
Yeah. How has being a household with 2 performing singer-songwriters, if you feel comfortable, how have you and Jeff kind of navigated, like what kind of explicit conversations do you guys have to have around negotiating time, the practical financial focus of like whose work gets prioritized for survival needs and then also personal emotional needs, all of that stuff?
Yeah, that's a whole.
Yeah.
That's just like shifted constantly the whole time too, of course. Our careers were like pretty well underway when we got together. And so we were sort of on more or less an equal footing, depending upon where or whatever, but like basically sort of an equal career footing. And we were both separately touring probably, 150 shows a year or something when we got together and when we were first married. So then when we had our daughter, obviously that was like a big and sudden shift. Like the slow general trajectory of it was that his career started to take precedence despite probably our vision for the whole thing. But like I did find that once I had a baby, I wasn't really gunning to get back out there immediately. I mean, I did. I was touring, but I was like perfectly fine to ramp down. And he ramped down too, but I probably went down like 2/3 and he went down 1/3 or something like that. But then it's sort of that thing where like as soon as like you've got this sort of 50-50 thing, and then as soon as it's 49-51, gravity pulls it over because it's like, well, he's making a little more money. So like we got to prioritize his tour because we need it. And so then it just like that kind of ratchets very slowly and invisibly, you know? Conceptually, that's sort of like disappointing. But in the big picture, I would say I'm pretty happy with how it's played out. I mean, I think I realized at a certain point a few years ago that I knew a lot of women with babies and little kids that were touring, and a lot of women without kids who were touring. But like women with older kids, I could count on like one hand, literally, that I knew of. And it's because it gets really hard in a different way, in a more complicated way, I guess, than the sort of simple, like, this baby needs me to be there, you know? Like, it gets a little bit more, I don't even know how to describe it. I guess when it's because they stop being an appendage to you and they start being someone who has a life, which they want to continue living, but they can't do that without you being sort of around, you know?
Yeah.
And that really changes the equation. So I feel, in a way, sort of shocked that we're about to send this kid off out of our house, you know, and I still have anything resembling a music career. I kind of consider that like a win. Definitely there were times when I did not know if I was going to make it this far. So yeah, but in terms of the calendar meetings that we have, you know, meetings like sit down at the kitchen table with the calendars, it's like my least favorite thing in my entire life.
Yeah.
It's so freaking complicated. And we have literally had, our kid was just writing about this in her college essay, actually, like times when Jeff and I would meet up in the kitchen at 3 a.m. and someone was coming back from the airport and pouring a whiskey, and the other person is pouring a coffee and going out to the airport, you know, and like just such a juggle, and then trying to be home enough together that we're actually a family who like lives together and is a family. It's wild. It's a rodeo. Thank God that we're both doing it, even though it makes it so complicated, but we really, really understand all of the facets of it. So when I'm like, this fall is crazy, but I got to go write for 4 days, it's like not even a question. It's like, absolutely, of course.
Yeah.
And just, there's a great amount of like good faith and understanding into just trying to fit these pieces together as best we can. And it's also really nice that, you know, it's a little unusual to have two parents that both tour separately. And it's crazy in those ways, but then it's also nice because both of us know what it is to be out on tour, and both of us know what it's like to be left at home with a kid while the other person is on tour. And that seems really crucial, or it just makes it easier anyway, to have that baseline understanding of what both the roles are and like how hard they both are and the upsides.
Yeah.
And, you know what I mean?
We're just kind of crossing that this year. I would say coincidental, because it's necessity-based, but like I really don't tour much. I pulled back on touring in like 2019, and then the pandemic definitely was like, you've been threatening to stay home at your studio, here you go.
Yeah.
And I just rode with that. But I've probably played more out-of-town shows this year since we've had two kids than I did in our older kids' entire life combined up to that point. So you're seeing that, Michaela's seeing that now more with two kids, and where I haven't really stayed home.
Yeah, and I think you're having that compassion for each other, because even when you're in your best selves, it is so hard as partners when you're sleep deprived and dealing with children to not slip into like, but I'm having the harder time. So
Absolutely.
It's really helpful. The first several years of Georgia's life, I would take Georgia places and be on my own, but I wasn't left at home with her a lot. Like he would be left at home with her. And now I've had more time at home with both kids, which is honestly like, it's manageable, but it's kind of like insane. And like,
you're very brave.
We recognize in this past month, I was away with Henry, the baby, and he was alone with our very wild 4-year-old. And he was texting me like a lot of like, oh my God. And I was away, so I was kind of like, stop harshing my vibe out here. Like, but then the next weekend, he was away and I was home, but with two kids. And I was like, oh my God, I think if you're just stuck at home with the kids by yourself, you just slip into like a wee little depression.
Yeah.
You know what you need to feel better, and it is absolutely unavailable to you. You know, whatever that is, like sleep or time by yourself and no one talking to you, or exercise, whatever it is, you know exactly what it is, and you know that it's not good.
Yeah, it's kind of like climbing to the top of the steepest hill in your town and climbing into a wagon, and you got to just let go. And like you can kind of steer, but if you steer too hard, you're just going to crash. And so you're just like, well, I'm just going to hold on and I'll make it to the bottom and it'll be cool.
Well, and I also think one of the things that was coming to mind as you were talking about the kind of progression, and also noticing how many women you see out there with older kids still touring, and like why that is. And sometimes I wonder, I think there's multiple levels. Is it because it's like emotionally, physically hard to keep it going and also choose to be away from your kids as they get older, and like you said, they become their own people, they have their lives, and you're involved and needed in a different way than them being babies? And or is it getting tired of the challenges you butt up against of not being able to find the support in the industry as an aging mother? And is it also, I think of our friend Annie we've referenced, who is an incredible singer-songwriter, and she's the reason I started touring. Was she had a band, was doing a lot more professionally, and her band kind of dissolved, and I had the audacity to ask her if she wanted to like book a tour with me, who had never played a show outside of New York City. And she was like, hell yeah. And we had the best West Coast tour. I learned a lot from her. And then she made a life shift, and she still writes songs and sings. This is for the audience out there, not Kris, But she occasionally tours, but she's really built a life with her family in Massachusetts. And when we've talked about it, she has mentioned that the aspect of touring, yes, loving to perform, loving to have that connection, but honestly recognizing the element of looking for some affirmation through it as well, and achievement, that for her, that's not really there anymore. So I do sometimes wonder also, is it maybe not needing it as much for the fulfillment and the affirmation of like, this is who I am? Because I definitely still feel that of like needing that and wanting it through that particular vehicle, because it's so deeply ingrained in me that touring and sharing and feeling that connection is one, fills my soul, but also my like mental self is like, well, that's how I prove to myself and the world that I am a musician.
Yep, I totally know what you're saying. I mean, I think for everyone, it's different. The being a parent, how much of that sort of steps in for things that you were needing or getting from your touring career. And with someone like Annie, like obviously she's still just as much a musician as she ever was. She's not fronting that in her work life right now. I mean, I think it's important to like make that distinction, because they are sort of two different things. But yeah, I think for some people, maybe it's kind of like having a kid eases back on your need to be on the road. And for some people, maybe it doesn't affect it that much at all. For me, I remember when I was pregnant, I found out I was pregnant. I was so terrified for all of my team to find out. And I remember just like actually at a label dinner, like back channeling with a waiter so I could order a beer, but he would bring me an O'Doul's in a like, so that no one would know. I was just like very paranoid.
Yeah.
Like obviously people are going to know eventually. And with my agent, I was just like, everyone's going to drop me and all that stuff. And none of that happened. And I feel like the career opportunities in terms of obviously being a woman, I'm about to turn 55. I'm sort of at like anti-peak, like commercial palatability right now. And I have like a joke with my agent that if I just hang around for like 10 years, then maybe I can be like legend status.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like it's there as much as I'm able to go engage with it. But you probably know that like Tom Waits has his quote about parenting and being a musician and having kids. It's something like, it's like having two dogs that hate each other and you've got to walk them both every night.
Oh, I didn't know this.
That's good. I haven't heard that. That's really good.
So like the job of being a parent and the job of being a touring musician are both jobs that want your entire capacity for energy and attention. They want all of it. And then that's still not enough, like they're both going to take everything. And so it's really hard. Almost any time that I'm touring, I have this feeling like I'm kind of half-assing everything, like it's hard to do a great job at both of those things. For me, the central struggle is, well, it's two things. For me, the thing that I'm pining for is not so much the attention and validation of the audience. It's the music community. It's being in the mix with other musicians and feeling like I'm in my place in that circle, And so for me, that's like the hard part. Like not being on stage doesn't hurt me that bad, but not being at the like festival hang or whatever, that's the stuff that kind of gets me,
Yeah.
Because that's what makes me feel like a musician in the way that I need to feel like, is to be sort of in the circle with people, which I am. But that's like you were talking about earlier about living in a music city or not living in a music city. And I had sort of got my start and built my community in the Boston scene, Cambridge scene, and then moved out here to this little tiny town where there are musicians scattered all in the hills out here, but it's not a scene in that same way. And that is something that at times is super, super hard for me. And then especially when I had a little kid, it made it harder to sort of go dip in Boston and kind of get my fix of that stuff. But it's basically like, it's hard to be a half-timer at either one of these jobs. It's just really hard. And it's not always that satisfying. And it takes a ton of work to even do it. So sometimes I think people just kind of like lose steam for how much effort it takes to really keep both of those threads like alive and feeling vibrant. It's a lot.
I think it takes a lot of trust too, like trust in your career that you can take your hands off and that it will continue. I'm wondering if you could speak on that.
Oh God.
If possible. It's one of those nebulous things for me. So
yeah, I feel like I have stress tested it pretty well at this point. Yeah, I think I've definitely been in phases where I've known and realized and said out loud, I'm experimenting with how much I can pull back and still have something that could be construed as a career. And then sometimes I've been leaning into it a lot harder. And it's sort of, I mean, it's cyclical anyway, just with albums and with sort of the our artistic side and our outward side, like we've been talking about. We're constantly sort of moving through these different cyclical phases, but it is hard to trust. And I still don't know where the line is, because I feel like there is a certain point at which it's not like people are going to forget you exist, but, there's a lot out there. We've been talking about this a lot because we both want both of these things, but one of us is actually really considering quitting socials and the other person is actively considering quitting Spotify. And we're talking about like, maybe we'll have a race and see whose career dies first.
Yeah.
It's hard to know because it feels like a hamster wheel. Like if you don't constantly put yourself out there, you're going to be gone. But I don't actually really believe that, or I don't believe that it's as true as we're sort of led to believe. I think there's a great importance to going away and like becoming less visible and certainly retreating to write, but like retreating from all the stuff to like the socials and disappearing a little bit and coming back. I think that's really healthy. I don't know what it does for your career, but I don't really feel like it hurts it that bad. I don't know.
I feel like it's so hard to measure because it's like, okay, disappearing for a little bit might quote unquote harm your career because your engagement goes down, whatever. Maybe people do forget about you and then it's hard to get them back. But what is your art going to be like if you're just constantly putting your attention there versus how much, I don't even like the word better, but how much truer or more soulful or whatever could your art be from stepping away? These are the constant questions that we all have to navigate for ourselves and also understand. I think part of growth, at least for me, has been I started out thinking, I'm all in on this career and that comes first. And then you start to learn, oh, there's some things that like I'm just not willing to do for this career, or things that are at odds with how to be a good whole human or take care of myself, or just are impossible for me to do because of the circumstances of life. And again, how your art then is informed by all of those decisions and your lifestyle. I don't think that then you can measure and be like, if then that art does better on Spotify, then that is your answer that it was good. That's where we're all messed up right now, is that we think Spotify streams or social media numbers or TikTok virality is like art god and tells us that it was worth it or good enough.
But maybe it's just telling you that you're good at Spotify.
Yeah,
like good at Instagram,
exactly that.
And is that what you, want to be? I mean, that is a thing. That's like one career path, but it's not what you really started out aiming for, is to be like great at socials posts.
Yeah, and increasingly the conflict of our morals with our work being implicit in really dangerous, hateful stuff like Spotify running ICE ads and
investing $750 million in military AI.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like we can feel so helpless, especially smaller artists, of like, well, how much money am I actually contributing to anyways? But I'm still implicit in the system. And that's definitely been gnawing at me lately.
Yep. Me too. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I feel like it's hard to be completely clean of any of this stuff and actually support yourself. But I also feel like it's still important to listen to how that stuff lands for you. And there have to be lines for anybody, where like you can't just follow them there. And I feel like they're all starting to get there. It's kind of a more radical commitment to the idea of like doing the motions and accepting the shape that comes from it. It's like, okay, so if that's what's authentic to you and you're going to take that action and that's going to result in you not being able to support yourself with music anymore, then, that's kind of where the rubber meets the road. It gets big. I don't have an answer to that. It's just like what we're all wrestling with. But it's hard. It's real.
Yeah. Kind of a hidden benefit to having this podcast in such a data-driven world that has been reassuring for me. And I think for Michaela as well, is like we get to see the numbers of how many people listen to these episodes. And it is not the more followers you have, the more listens. It's not the more Spotify streams you have, the more listens at all. They are completely disconnected. So we've had people with upwards of 1 million followers, over 1 million followers on here, that the listens are sometimes literally like the lowest of the last month.
Fascinating.
Literally. Huh. And it takes very specific fan to be like, ooh, I want to listen to my favorite artist talk for an hour.
I know.
Like, that's a dedicated fan, but it reinforces that idea of like, it is the quality of connection with your fans and not the quantity of connection with your fans.
Absolutely. That's one thing I have felt grateful for in terms of getting to build my audience in sort of pre-internet times. I mean, obviously it's, you know, a lot of other people have sort of joined my little world since then, but it just feels very impervious to all of this other stuff that we're talking about, which is so out of our control and so mystifying and all that kind of stuff. But like, I do feel like, I mean, I don't have their addresses anymore to send them the little postcard, but I could like send just with my email list. At least it's like, those are real people who really care about what I'm doing. And that's like, nothing is better than that. You know, like nothing, that's what's going to actually carry you through.
Yeah.
100%.
And on both levels, you know, those are the people that your art is really connecting with on the heart level, on the service level that we were talking about.
Yeah. And also I think they get it, and they also get how much the business has changed and how hard it is. And like, those are the people that are gonna, whatever, sign up for your Patreon or like kick a little extra in or like do your pre-order, whatever kind of crowdfunding thing. Like people that are all in with you, you know, that's like just so precious to have those people.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. Well, speaking of hour-long conversations, we like to be wary of people's time that they've given us. But we do like to wrap up with kind of the same question for everybody. And it's a choose your own adventure. And it's either something that you would tell younger you that was just getting into this as a career, not writing, but like, I'm going to do this and make a living doing this. Something you would tell that, Kris, or something that somebody has told you along the way that continues to resonate with you and fill your tank?
That first question, I just got asked that on stage. I was at the Norwells Festival in Ohio, which is run by Over the Rhine, that band. It's on their land. And I was there, and I was in a sort of panel discussion thing with Kristen from that band and Amy Helm, and it was about being lifer women in the business. And I was asked that question. I just said something so stupid. I don't know. I completely shanked it. And I've been thinking about it ever since because I feel like I have a new answer to that question.
Ooh, retribution.
Yeah. So I'm going to just like pay it backwards or whatever.
Yeah.
I think what I would tell myself, although I don't think that I would probably believe or understand it, but I would still like to introduce the idea to my like 26-year-old, have just written a few songs self. I would just like take her little puppy face with my hands and be like, this is not about you. Like none of this is actually about you. It feels like it is, and it is, of course, but like the reason that you're offering it to other people and what you're actually giving them has actually really very little to do with you and who you are and what's going on in your life. And are you cool or not cool? Like, what are you wearing and whatever, like all of that stuff. My parents are singing like choral stuff. And so I go to these concerts sometimes. I remember going to one time, and there was this woman, like soloist, singer in this big sort of church cathedral thing, and she was singing a solo in front of this choral group. I just was so struck with her vibe of like higher purpose. Like she was singing to a higher purpose. The way she was physically even standing, I felt like I could see like her roots going way down into the ground. Like it seemed so generous and so eternal what she was doing. And I was, you know, in my late 20s probably, and I was kind of like, oh, I wish that was what my thing was, but it's just about my little stupid little life, you know? And it's not. It is that same thing. Like what we were talking about before, where you're like bringing stuff up for people and offering it, and it's like passes through you, but it's not you. And realizing that has really clarified the whole work of it to me. I feel like I wasted a lot of energy as a younger performer just stressing about stuff that's completely irrelevant. Just like, who am I and how is this reflecting on me as a human? So that's what I would say. And she wouldn't get it. And she'd still have to live through like decades of doing it.
Wow, you kind of meta answered both, where you talk to the younger self to plant a seed that would resonate and fill that younger self's cup
like,
over time.
Memento or something.
Yeah.
Inception.
Yeah.
Kris, thank you for taking time to sit and chat with us. This is
it's such a pleasure to talk to you guys.
Yeah, I'm glad we finally made it happen. Thank you for being patient. I fell off like 3 months.
Oh, geez. Whatever.
She was like, probably because you have 2 kids and a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was telling my piano tuner of all people, he was here this morning, and he was like, yeah, it's been like over 3 years since I've been here. I was like, Wow. You could have told me it was January and I would have been like, yeah, that sounds right.
I know.
Goes by in a flash.
Yeah.
Thank you again. Good luck with college applications.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You guys, good luck with everything, your whole
Thank
circus.
you. All right, Kris, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Thank you to all of you who subscribe to our Patreon or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get our show. If you haven't subscribed yet, take a second to do that right now, and we'll see you back here next week.